Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
Welcome in to TITV. Across the studio from Tider Insiders, Rodney Orr. I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris as we continue to work at a safe social distance during this pandemic. All right, we got a jam-packed show. It appears Alabama owns Georgia right now, particularly after halftime, Rodney. That was the case in the National Championship game. Bama came back. That was the case in the SEC Championship game. Bama came back. And again, the Tide did it this past Saturday night. The Crimson Tide put it away in the second half. Remember, they actually trailed 24-20 at halftime. It looked like anybody's game. But after the halftime, 21-0 Alabama. Mac Jones, 24-32, 417, 4 touchdowns. He's the SEC Offensive Player of the Week. Devontae Smith and Najee Harris each had a touchdown. Harris over 150 yards rushing. Devontae over 150 yards receiving. The defense had 3 interceptions. Will Reichard looks like maybe he's finally solved the Alabama kicking riddle. That's a 52-yarder right before halftime. This game marked the first time an SEC team had a 400-yard passer, 2 150-yard receivers, and a 150-yard rusher in the last 20 years. That's called getting it done. These players are really starting to pick it up, and the players understand exactly what they're doing.
I feel like we've been getting better each week, and for the most part, I feel like we do have some more room to improve, but overall we have been getting better. And yeah, like you said, Coach been talking about that, and we knew as a group that we need to be a more physical front and more dominant up front.
All right, Ronnie, let's talk about that defense in terms of what they were able to do. In the first half, I have to tell you, I'm sitting in the press box saying this is business as usual. Georgia with Stetson Bennett and the running game, they're making big plays. They're moving it down the field. They had 24 points. But in the second half, things started to change. First of all, Alabama got the lead, which I think was important to take Bennett out of his comfort zone. But then the defense started getting pressure. They got in the passing lanes. It was really just a different performance from the first half to the second half.
Yeah, got a couple of interceptions, Gary, in the second half. Key interceptions, one when Georgia was going in. Obviously, that was big. Again, they converted after turnovers. Here's Malachi Moore's interception right here. But it's the fact that, number one, you stop Georgia. Number two, your offense converts. And, Gary, the defense really, while they gave up, 264 yards, I think it was, in the first half, shut Georgia down pretty much under 150 yards in the second half. So hopefully this is a step in the right direction for this defense. Nick Saban said, look, we really said, don't worry about statistics. Let's just get stops. And I think when you look at the brand of football now, the style of football, Gary, that's really what you have to do. You have to focus on getting stops.
That's the second half. That's the good. And really, that gives Alabama something to build on. But in the first half, Rodney, as you said, Georgia closing in on 300 yards total offense, and the defense just didn't seem to have that confidence. They built that as the game went on. But in the first half, what concerned you about the defensive effort?
Well, I thought that, number one, Gary, obviously they gave up a big play where they got a bad matchup outside with Christian Harris on James Cook, the speedy running back who had the long run, but also running right up the middle. There you see Zamir White. He gutted Alabama a few times straight up the middle. That was certainly a concern. In the second half, Alabama, I thought, did a better job of stopping the Georgia run because, listen, if you can stop the Georgia run, and we saw this in the second half, if you can slow down the run a little bit, though Kirby did kind of go more to the pass, but if you can slow down the run a little bit with Georgia, force Stetson Bennett, we said this last week, force the game into Stetson Bennett's hands a little bit, he started turning the ball over.
41-24, a statement Saturday for Alabama and Nick Saban, who came back after a positive COVID test on Wednesday and then 3 negative tests, so that Wednesday test was ruled a false positive. He coached in the game and coached very well. It's now time for Coach Talk. We move on to Tennessee, and the Vols had some trouble at quarterback last weekend versus Kentucky. Garantano was awful. So now Alabama head coach Nick Saban may not be sure if the Crimson Tide is going to have to prepare for a second quarterback. Multiple players possibly at the position for Tennessee for this weekend's game in Knoxville.
I don't really think we can. They do a lot of things on offense. It's going to be very challenging for our defense to make the adjustments that they need to make, in this game. I don't know. We don't have enough evidence to know how they would change what they do if they played somebody differently at quarterback. So I don't think we can prepare any different.
Rodney and I will have our predictions for this game later in the show. But let's talk about the matchup. Rodney, Tennessee was disastrous against Kentucky. After a pretty good first half at Georgia, they got blown out in the second half. And then on Saturday at Neyland Stadium, they got beat 34-7 by a team that had not won at Knoxville since 1984. Garantano, as I said, was just awful in the game. But this is Alabama. They've got a bye week next week. They're going to be all in here. I expect a much better Tennessee effort on Saturday against Alabama, don't you?
Well, it's a rivalry game. Usually that brings out the best of both teams. So certainly I think Tennessee's played well, Gary. They've won 8 of their last 10 games, okay? The last 2 weeks, obviously, they ran into a much superior team in Georgia. They got blown out in the second half because why? Warren Tarnow turned the ball over. Same thing in this game against Kentucky. He had 2 pick sixes, turned the ball over several times. Tennessee just could not overcome those pick sixes and the things that happened in this game. There you see Kentucky returning one of those for a touchdown. So, again, I think that when you look at this game, you look at Tennessee, obviously they've got a very good offensive line, very talented offensive line, good running backs. There you see Eric Gray. He's a really nifty back, guy that can make big plays. Ty Chandler's another outstanding back. Try to take the game, if you're Tennessee, out of Warren Tarnow's hands. If you're Alabama, you certainly want to, again, focus on the run, stop the run. If you could slow it down, make Warren Tarnow have to throw it, you can get some turnovers.
Rodney, a quick question before we move on. Pruitt fired his defensive line coach, former Auburn defensive lineman Jimmy Brumbaugh, after just 4 games, and says he's going to coach the defensive line himself. I'm not a big fan of that. How hard is it, do you think, to be a head coach and then also coach a position group?
Well, again, that's I guess Pruitt thinks he can do it, and again, he's obviously a great defensive coach, but coaching the defensive line, he was a linebackers coach here. He also coached in the secondary. Don't really know what his expertise is on the defensive line, but when you're a head coach, Gary, I think that can be difficult. Some guys manage it well, but I really think when you're a head coach, if possible, you want to be running the team. You want to have coaches at every position. But let's say this. I'm sure that he has someone on the staff, Gary, that will be probably doing a lot of help with the defensive line.
All right, this Tennessee team, for their fans, that 8-game winning streak is ancient history. The natives are restless in Knoxville. This is a big, big game for the Vols. Tennessee hasn't beaten Alabama since 2006. Our predictions later. Tough go for the Alabama soccer team over the weekend. Ole Miss came in. Number 22, Mo O'Connor, will find the back of the net off of a deflected shot to give the Rebels a 2-0 lead in the second half. Bad luck there for the Alabama goalkeeper. Late in the game, Alabama defender Jessica Sikora's shot gets into a bunch of players here, and it looks like it gets into the net. But you know what? After review, they ruled it was no goal. The players weren't happy about it. Ole Miss wins 2-0. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Tennessee Titans running back Derrick Henry shows Houston and the rest of the National Football League who's the boss. Boy, he is big and bad. And it's Tua time in South Beach. We'll discuss the impact of Tua Tagovailoa becoming the Dolphins' starting quarterback, both for Alabama and for the NFL. That's coming up. And we'll get to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. 205-348-WVUA. The number, as always, that's 348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen or tweet at us using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with a show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV, 20 years and still going strong. Stay with us. Welcome back to TITV. I'm Gary Harris, sitting across the studio from Tider Insider's Rodney Orr. Tua Tagovailoa made his NFL debut this past Sunday at the end of the Dolphins' 24-0 win over the Jets. The Dolphins certainly must have liked what they saw. The former Alabama quarterback played only 6 snaps. He went 2 for 2 for 9 yards. But today, first reported by ESPN's Adam Schefter, Tua is going to be the starting quarterback when the Dolphins play their next game after their bye November 1st against the Los Angeles Rams. Now, clearly he's been showing them something in practice. But, Rodney, I want to get your thoughts on this because the Dolphins are 3-3. They're playing well. They're in the playoff hunt. Thad Fitzpatrick, the veteran quarterback, has been doing really, really well. So for them to make the move to Tua tells me that not only do they want to get to their first-round draft pick, but he showed them something in practice that lets them know he's ready. Because it's not like the Dolphins are 1-5 or 0-6. As I said, they're playing well.
Yeah. You know, I was watching him there, Gary. I couldn't help but think, and on that rollout, he had pressure, and I'm thinking, get rid of it. You know, we've seen him injured so many times. First thing I thought about. But yeah, I certainly really look forward to watching Tua, and hopefully performs extremely well. But you know, I'm reading a lot of the Dolphins fans, and they're kind of like, hey, we're certainly glad to have Tua, but we're playing pretty well with Ryan Fitzpatrick right now. I mean, why are we making this change at this point? But you know, they made a big investment in him, and you know, Gary, I think probably they had already had it planned out that if he progressed to a certain point, that by now that they would have him in the game.
And you do have the bye. He's got 2 weeks to prepare for a good Rams defense. Let me ask you this. Clearly for Miami, he is the future. He's going to be the face of that franchise. What does this mean for Alabama? Which, let's be honest, A.J. McCarron's going to have a solid career as a backup. But the Crimson Tide, for all its success at other positions, has had trouble putting a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, I think it's big. It's huge. I think when you look at what Tua did when he was here, the success that he had, it attracted a lot of top players in terms of wide receivers, quarterback. How about Bryce Young from California? I think that certainly was very instrumental watching the success that Tua had. And now when other players, other kids, as they see Tua in the NFL, they know he played at Alabama. Kids grew up hearing about Tua. And I think certainly if you watch him, if he's successful in the NFL, I think it's going to be really big for Alabama's recruiting.
And of course, Jalen Hurts with the Eagles finished at Oklahoma but played 3 years at Alabama. Well, finding former Alabama players in the National Football League not hard, but maybe none of them playing better than this guy, the beast, Derrick Henry. Led the Titans to a 42-36 win over the Texans in overtime this past Sunday. He went for 212 yards rushing, had 52 yards receiving. He is doing some things that nobody else has done. He's the first player in NFL history to have 200-yard games in 3 straight seasons. Look at that size and speed. Rodney, I want to get your reaction because we watched him at Alabama. You watched him coming out of Yulee High School. And even though he was always great, everybody was always looking to diss him, it seems. Well, at Yulee, oh, he's so much bigger than everybody. At Alabama, well, he didn't get off to a great start. He had one magical year with a great offensive line and a great defense, got the Heisman. But then he's the 45th player taken in the draft, second-round draft pick. Kind of backed up DeMarco Murray's first 2 years. He's a bust. Just acknowledge his greatness. This is something that I don't know we've ever seen, this kind of combination of size, speed, power, and elusiveness in a single running back.
Yeah. And you know, again, who really knows why? But I think, Gary, I really believe that a lot of it or some of it has to do with his size, which is obviously very odd for a running back. Listen, when he was in high school, everyone said he's not going to be a running back on the next level. He'll be a linebacker. And, you know, he's proven everyone wrong, but at the same time, there is something there that makes everyone, for some reason, not give him his due. But again, it does seem like now he's starting to get more of that.
Did you know who always said he was a running back? Derrick Henry. He never, ever thought about playing in another position, and now he's in the MVP talk in the NFL. Well, first for a former Crimson Tider on Sunday as well. How about Cam Sims, man? The guy just battled. At Alabama, he was never a star. I'm not even sure he was ever a starter. But he's got the size. There you see his first touchdown catch right at the end of the game with 36 seconds to play. The Redskins went for 2 to try to win the game and didn't make it, so they lose 20-19. But good for Cam Sims, Rodney. We always watched him at Alabama and thought, man, if they just give him more of a chance, he can make some plays. Good to see him succeeding in the NFL, and it goes to what we've talked about before. You don't even really have to be a regular starter at Alabama to make it in the National Football League.
Yeah, and I think Cam, too, Gary, in all fairness, had some injuries here at Alabama. It slowed him down a little bit, but, you know, he's really taken off in the NFL. And someone asked him, do you regret going to Alabama? And he said, absolutely not. I mean, he said that it is what built him. It is what made him into the player that he is now.
And now he's catching touchdowns in the National Football League. Well, still to come on TITV another week, another reason for Alabama basketball fans to get excited about what Coach Nate Oates is building. We'll explain next. And also, your phone calls are coming up. 205-348-9882. You can also email us or tweet at us. Keep it dialed in. More TITV is on the way. Nate Oates and the Bama basketball staff are rolling in recruiting. They landed JUCO power forward Langston Wilson from Georgia Highlands College. He's rated the number 2 overall junior college prospect in the nation for 2021. And number 2 power forward, number 2 overall prospect, number 1 power forward. There you see a lefty that can get up. He's the 3rd commitment in the past 4 weeks for Alabama basketball. There might be a couple more. There's one bit of bad news, though. Alex Chiku, the outstanding freshman, has reportedly suffered an Achilles injury in practice. We don't know the severity, but usually when it's an Achilles, it's not good. Alabama's certainly hoping not to have the same bad injury luck that it had last year, but not off to a good start there with Alex Chico, outstanding 6'11" freshman forward. All right, let's get to the phone lines. First up is John over in Bessemer. Hey, John, how are you?
Gary, what's going on, buddy?
I don't know, buddy. What's up?
Hey, man, I enjoyed that game Saturday, man. It had me scared a little bit, man. I've been keeping up with football recruiters. Have y'all heard of a player named Kool-Aid? I want to know, is he going to sign with Alabama? And I want to know about the Atlanta, with Georgia play Alabama again. Are we favored in that game? And I'll holler at y'all later, brother.
Okay, brother. All right. First, Kool-Aid McKinstry is rated by many as the number 1 prospect in the state out of Pinson Valley. 2-way player, defense, offense, secondary receiver, also a basketball player, Rodney. And, yeah, Sunday we're going to find out what he's going to do. Yep.
He's a 5-star corner, Gary. And, if you were a member of Tider Insider, John, you would have seen my prediction today on Kool-Aid. Announces, as Gary said, on Saturday. And right now, again, I think that Alabama's in good position. I'll just leave it at that. But obviously Auburn is recruiting him extremely hard and done a great job, and so has LSU. So we'll see what happens.
And as far as the SEC championship game you're referring to, first, Georgia and Alabama both have to get there. If they both get there, John, right now I would assume, unless something unforeseen happens, that Alabama would be favored over Georgia in that rematch. All right, let's get to a Twitter question. This is from Goal Line Stan. Do you think Coach Saban will dial up more blitz packages versus UT? Goal Line Stan, I'll let Rodney comment more. I think they're going to dial up whatever they think works. They got more pressure, especially in the second half against Georgia. They blitzed some against Ole Miss, and when they blitzed, they paid for it. So you have to be careful. I think everybody equates, well, we're going to blitz, and it's automatically going to be a good thing. When you blitz, you leave yourself exposed. Rodney, the double-edged sword of a blitz is if you get there, it's great. If you don't, you open up the possibility of a big play. Got to be careful with those things.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think you're certainly going to, as you said, Gary, I think you stated it well. If they feel like that's something they need to do, want to do in a particular situation, they will. I mean, I remember, was it last year or 2 years ago in Knoxville when Xavier McKinney had a tremendous blitz and laid Warrantano out. So they've blitzed him before a little bit. But, again, I really think the key, Gary, to stopping Tennessee is going to be stopping their run.
All right, coming up on Tider Insider Television, Alabama volleyball gets the opportunity to open the season with a blast. More on that coming up. And more of your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, there's the phone number. Phone lines are open at 205-348-9882. Stay with the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the one, the only Tider Insider TV. Alabama volleyball will finally get an opportunity to open the season on Wednesday and Thursday against number 7 Missouri at Foster Auditorium. The Crimson Tide returns 5 starters from last year, as well as a new member, 8 new members to the team, 4 freshmen and 2 transfers, part of that class. Overall, this is the 15th meeting between the two teams. Missouri leading in wins with 11. The last time these two teams met was in November of 2019. Alabama with a chance, though, to get the season started with a big upset. All right, welcome back into TITV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Let's go back out to our phone lines. And Rusty is with us from down in Demopolis. Hey, Rusty.
Hey, old buddy. Are y'all staying safe, man?
Yeah, we're good, my friend.
Good deal. Stay safe.
Thank you.
I got this guy come in to place kicking game this year. What have they hired a new coach, a kicking coach, or what's the deal on that?
All right.
Kickers.
Well, Rusty, they have always had a history of signing highly rated kickers. Some of them have kicked okay. Some of them haven't worked out. But Will Reichard from Hoover High School was going to be the guy, I think, last year until he got hurt. And, Joseph Bolovitz stepped in, who's also a pretty highly rated kicker. But Will Reichard's a guy who has, as a high school kicker, done everything that you could want a kicker to do. And he showed the other night when he made that 52-yarder right before halftime, Rodney, he's 4 for 4 on field goals this year, that he's got a chance, I think, to be special. Yeah, he does. There's no question about that. It was unfortunate that he was injured last year, Gary, but certainly, clearly, looks like he's healthy now and kicking extremely well with a lot of confidence. And I'm telling you, when you hit a 52-yarder, the other ones were more mid-range, short-range kicks that he's had this year. But when you hit one from 52 in a clutch situation, because that was, I mean, right before the half, great opportunity to get some points on the board, cut into that lead.
big kick for Will Reichard.
All right, let's get to an email real quick. Gary in Tuscaloosa, what will it take to get Bama's running game to a championship level? Is it the RBs, the running backs, O-line, or coaching? Well, Gary, I think they're getting it there. I mean, when you run for close to 200 yards total and over 150 for Najee against that Georgia defense, coming off of what Najee did against Ole Miss, I mean, I don't know how much more they got to get cranked up, Rodney, but I'd say they're getting it going pretty well.
Yeah, Gary, it's been kind of strange because there's some people. We even saw the report from Pro Football Focus that basically said Georgia had dominated Alabama's run game. I really didn't see it that way. I think when you run 17 times in the fourth quarter and you run off 12 minutes, that's the way you want to end a game. Nick Saban talked about it being a 15-round fight. Well, Gary, in the latter rounds, when Alabama was pounding the ball on those last two drives, that's when they exerted their will on Georgia.
All right, prediction time when we come back. Thanks for the phone call. Stay with us. How about this? The Alabama All-Girls Cheerleader Squad received their national championship rings this past weekend. They won the UCA Division 1A All-Girl National Championship in January, and that's a nice ring. They deserve it. Congratulations to those young ladies. All right, welcome back into Tider Insider TV. It's prediction time, Alabama and Tennessee. Not the third Saturday in October this year. It's the fourth Saturday, but it's still the Tide on the banks of the Tennessee River at Neyland Stadium taking on the Vols, Rodney.
Yeah, Gary, when I look at this game, obviously Tennessee's made a lot of progress. I mentioned earlier they've won 8 of their last 10. I think Alabama's clearly the more talented team. I think Nick Saban's maybe his biggest problem, Gary, will be getting this team to focus after the big emotional win against Georgia. But I think in the end, Alabama's too much for Tennessee, 38-17.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Tennessee makes me nervous simply because I think they're going to circle the wagons. But when they have come close to knocking off Alabama, Rodney, interestingly enough, it's been in Tuscaloosa. It's been blowout city in Knoxville. I think that continues. I think Tennessee scores a little bit, but Alabama way too strong. 48-20, the final score Saturday in Knoxville. All right, thank you for tuning in. A reminder, you can catch a replay of the show tonight at 10:30 here on WVUA 23, or catch it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Have a good night, everybody.